something a little bit different this year outside of just commentary. So we're doing interviews with players and the head coach of Neptune. So I hope you enjoy it. My first guest is the head coach of Neptune, Pat Price. Pat, you're welcome.
Thanks, Mel. Glad to be here, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out for having a chat.
Of course.
So Pat, you were here in 2010 as head coach. Got to a final, didn't pick up silverware. So just given your track record as a coach, like you've been quite successful. You've won trophies elsewhere. So would it be a fair comment to say you have unfinished business with Neptune?
I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, I think every opportunity that I've had since I arrived, I've taken it on as a project. And with like any project, you want to see how can you take it from X to Y by Z, whenever that finish point might be. So I think at the time, my hope was that I was going to be here longer with Neptune. You know, as it played out that time, you know, family circumstances and stuff, I ended up going back to the States for a bit.
Sure.
But we had a really nice jump in that 2-year period. The first year we had a very tough semifinal cup loss here at a packed stadium with Joanne James's crew and all those guys, and special player, still playing pro, which is a testament to who he is. You know,
I follow him a little bit.
Exactly.
He was a strong beast.
Tough fella, but very skilled and a great teammate. But so we got to that, and then the following year, it was a team that I think we were a little bit undermanned, but we gained a lot of momentum, particularly from January onwards, and we put together a terrific run late in the season. Ended up going all the way to the Superleague finals, which was I don't know if it was expected or unexpected. I think years later, when you look back at it, and I've had these conversations as recently as yesterday with guys like Jared Noonan, that it's a great memory to look back on, and when you look at it, I think that they felt that they improved year on, you know, in the 2 years, and so very satisfying from that point of view. As in, did the project go further? It did, yeah. But back to your point and your question, unfinished business, definitely. And you know, when you look at the support behind the scenes with the committee and the resources and the supporters and sponsorship behind the club, you know, we're you know, there's pieces in place. It's not a broken situation at all. So the idea behind it is to make sure that we get the right blend of players and import players and take it again as a project. So we've been doing an awful lot of work since the end of May and beginning of June to try to get this you know, in a position where once the season kicks off, the fruits of your labor from the summer can kind of come through a little bit. So there's a lot of planning going on.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose that nearly leads to my next question. Talk to me about like putting your squad together. Talk to me about your import players,
Sure.
Their strengths. Talk to me about your Irish players, their strengths. And then finally, how do you gel all those players together?
Well, I think it was important that we looked at it like across the board, as in I never really believed in just going and saying that guy's talented, sign him. It's almost a case of how do you identify the potential returning players and the core group of players and guys you're going to have expectations for contributions from, and how do you build depth around that, and you identify it in a number of ways where there's needs, and certainly I thought having some strong perimeter threats from the wing, you know, led us to Armand Davis, you know, and who's a strong background, played in the SEC conference at Alabama, did a postgraduate year out in Santa Barbara, and has, you know, a number of professional years under his belt. So he brings maturity, and you know, I thought that was important. That a guy came in and he already kind of knew the ropes of international basketball, and he knows he understands club structures, and he knows the landscape of club basketball in Europe. But But first and foremost, did he tick the box in terms of being a talented perimeter player who can stretch the defense, and what we want to do offensively in terms of spacing and timing and cutting. I just thought he was a great fit, and he's a high character kid, so he ticked a number of boxes for us.
Good attitude.
Terrific attitude. He's a confident guy, and I think I was asking him about. Over the weekend, I was asking him about one of his games, when they played against Kentucky, who was in their conference, so they'd be playing them a couple times a year, across his career. And, the one game he was talking about they were up against Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, and Bam Adebayo, 3 NBA stars, and that was his kind of Tuesday night game, or Saturday. It wasn't a once-off. These are the guys that they were facing on a regular basis. So he's a high-level player, and he's But importantly, he's a high character kid, and I think he's going to be a great fit.
And that is important, like that. There's a nice gel in the team, that there's no big egos, or there's nobody trying to take the lead too much, that everyone is comfortable with each other. And there's a good atmosphere.
There it is. Well, again, you build towards that. And the guys are getting to know each other, and, between Armand and the other fellas, it's important that they're spending a lot of time together prior to October, and we're finding lots of ways to do that. Kind of internally, the guys have their little social arrangements. They might. I know they were down to Roberts Cove and for a swim, and they did the sauna day, and they've gone out a few times together, and certainly weekend trips or these preseason tournaments, they're spending concentrated periods of time together, and that's the only way. That's the only way to do it is keep them in an environment where they're bouncing off each other and comfortable around each other.
I think in another 4 weeks they won't be going down to Roberts Cove in winter.
I think it was important they got that out of the way.
During our summer, or 1 week summer. Pat, let's talk about putting your squad together, and about your import players, their strengths, and also then the local players and their strengths, and how do you gel all that together?
Well, look, again, we worked very hard in the off-season. The committee were a huge help. Ronan O'Sullivan put in countless hours to work with me. We're just bouncing ideas about how we shape this roster, and how do we create not only a roster that works, but a roster that has depth, that's able to get through the rigors of a schedule that has 5 or 6 doubleheaders, and you try to build that roster accordingly. And we didn't want to be very, very light in any one spot, so we tried to look at versatility in roles as well. Okay. And we had a great boost with Darrell Sullivan coming back from the States, and again, he gives us an added perimeter threat. He can get to the basket. He's got length on the defensive end. He's certainly a threat from deep, from beyond the 3-point line. He's got great range. And he'll balance the floor really well with guys like Armand Davis. To be able to have two great wing attackers in Kean Heafy and Jamal Wright. And Jamal had a successful year down in Portugal, and we really like the way he can attack the basket. We like the way he cuts off the ball. He plays bigger than his size. He has great length. He's a terrific one-on-one defender. And in our pressure defensive systems, he kind of ticked a lot of the boxes there as well. Up front with the forwards, Yaxasolo he's a bit of an enforcer. He's got great strength, but he's versatile, and again he's strong enough and big enough to guard the post and defend around the basket and protect the rim a bit. And rebound, but he's also versatile enough to take a guy off the dribble. He's versatile enough that if he's coming down as a trailer, he could shoot the 3. He could either pick and roll or pick and pop, so the defense will have to pick their poison. So there's versatility in there that we really liked. He's again, we really sought kind of high character guys in the interviewing process and in the vetting process, and Yax is another guy, just a bit of leadership and single-minded. He's a strong-minded kid,
I know him, he's very busy all the time.
Yeah,
what I see
he's a high activity. Pretty relentless, and it's great for him. He came in terrific shape. He prides himself of keeping a high fitness level. And that's going to stand to him, particularly on weekends where we have double headers and things like that. And he's a great complement to Neil Sabata, and they have a nice connection already on the court where they're spotting each other and finding each other, and they're working well together. So to have guys again like Neil's got one more year of experience under his belt. He had a bit of a knock in the preseason and missed a number of weeks, but we know that, as we get into October and certainly by November, he'll be hitting his stride as well. Yeah, and he's been so great, even in the off the court stuff in terms of helping us plan and get this group gelling, and which is really important. And when we look up at the lead guard spot, to be able to have two really solid guards in Roy Downey and Connor O'Sullivan, it's been very good. Again, Connor didn't play this past weekend. He's after picking up a shoulder knock as well. But again, to get Roy and Connor kind of a bit of job sharing in there and a bit of depth of talent and they're, they play. They have some similar things that they do, but they also differ in certain ways.
I was going to say, I like their differences.
Exactly.
Roy's a bit explosive.
Exactly.
Connor's a little bit more set.
Exactly. Again, but it's just to that point, which is depth in positions, and can you look and see two or three guys that can fill in and share the load, because it's challenging sometimes when you're putting these rosters together to say, hey, I'm going to ask these guys to give as much physically as they possibly can on the defensive end, to run an offensive system that's demanding because we need to go in transition as well, and if we're doing that, we're going to need depth.
Yeah.
So if
and we mentioned 6 double headers, so
no question.
Having depth like that is
That's right. And even the other layers you get into, I think I mentioned Adam Heafy in terms of his depth in he can play on the perimeter. He can play a little bit of the 4, even if we wanted to play an undersized lineup. Maybe we're switching screens or something like that. We were able to play, even in spurts over the weekend, Kelvin alongside Roy at one time, where we were a little bit of a smaller lineup on the perimeter, but now you got another 3-point threat on the floor, and I think Kelvin had a pretty good preseason, particularly the last 2 tournaments we had. We have some, developing guys that are coming through, and David Aluko is a big body who's first year Superleague, but David's one of these guys we're kind of banking on his future, as in...
Of course, 5-6 years ago, he was a real skinny kid.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I walked in for the first time, I didn't see him in a while.
Yeah.
He's like a big...
He is, as they say in West Cork, he's all there. Yeah. He's all there. And what we're really talking to Dave a lot about is his development. That it's not necessarily all going to come all at once, but he wants the opportunity. He's looking forward to the opportunity. He's gelled really well with the guys. He works hard in practice. And again, he's one for the future, certainly, because he's got a lot of basketball ahead of him. He's a young guy, and to be able to get a little bit of a little bit more experience coming across. So with Owen Connolly coming back in, and exactly, nice threat to be coming off the bench as well. And Owen's done a great job, and he's just a level-headed kid, and he's got a great demeanor about him. And look, that's really important, particularly in my first year, is that everybody understands what the standard is going to be in terms of how we want to carry ourselves and how we want to be around each other, and between I think the work that's going on behind the scenes with the committee support and Ronan, as I mentioned, has been such an incredible help to me, and we're working on an internal leadership group. And we're working on, with an outside body on things like that, and really just trying to develop these guys short term and long term.
And just in terms of that, then the team gelling and all that, you played a pre-season tournament already in the Mardyke last week, and I heard some people say we're a little undersized. We're not big and physical. Does that bother you at all, or are you happy that we've enough weapons elsewhere?
Yeah, look, I think there's big and then there's playing big, okay. And I know a lot of big teams that don't play big, and I think you can carve that in a number of ways. I don't know, and I've never really subscribed to the idea that you always have to match like for like. You know, I would rather somebody maybe adapt to us than us adapt to everybody else. And you know, the question is defensively, can we make stops where we need to make stops, or can we make stops in other areas maybe that other places, you know, or other teams aren't doing. I'm not, you know, I don't necessarily think that we need to you know, go like for like with every single position. I think that's, you know, that kind of goes away from your own philosophy. I think when we were putting the team together, we were looking for a bit of versatility, you know, and seeing, you know, that the guys that we have can play multiple positions, whether a 4 could play a 5, whether a 3 could play a 4, whether a 2 could play a 3, and along those lines. And defensively, what that allows for is a bit of versatility. It allows us to have a defensive tempo that I'm looking for as well, you know, and certainly on the offensive end, and any team that might be bigger than us has to find a way to defend us as well.
Okay. So what you're saying really is you don't need to be 6'9" to play aggressive defense.
No, I mean, you know, size helps, but and talent is a trump card. Talent is a trump card, and you know, even for us, we place a heavy emphasis on length defensively. So there's length, as in you have length, and then there's use of length. Because I know a lot of long players that don't use their length. So everything is an application, and so again, what we're looking for is up tempo on both ends of the floor.
So clearly, it doesn't
we don't want to be in a situation where we have to go against 5 defenders all the time, and conversely, you know, we want to be able to not make it about bigs. Let's put it that way. I mean, that's the short version of it. We don't want games to necessarily become about one particular player, and that's not going to be a focus. It's never really part of my philosophy anyway. You know, so you know, the guys that we brought in, you know, if you're a pursuit rebounder, you don't need to be big. If you know, there's 2 different kinds of rebounders. You know, there's position rebounders, right? I'm going to go box out like Coach taught me when I was a kid. You know, or there's pursuit, which is go get the ball, and we'll be doing a lot of that as well.
Okay. Talk to me about the structure of the league. So the structure has changed this year. I call it a proper league now, like that is not conferences or whatever.
Sure.
So I think you have like 6 double headers. Is that a big problem? Is it a big problem for local players? How do you deal with that? How do you prep for that?
Well, I mean, look at when they go back and forth between conferences or straight league, you know, there's always arguments for and against, and that has been kind of going on, I say, the last, you know, 15 years since they started rolling out conferences. I know my first year here in '98, there was 14 teams in a straight Superleague, and it's, you know, again, it's a grind, but you know what it also means is that, you know, you very much have to apply a one game at a time approach. You know, there's no real value in looking too far down the fixture list and go, well, that game, you know, I'm not a big guy for measuring games that are in the distance or rating one opponent over the other. When you look at the table at the end of the year, no one's going to say, well, you beat these guys, but you lost to those guys. Yeah. You know, so that was a good win. You know, the numbers are going to be the numbers at the end of the year. So I think it just kind of underscores the importance of having a one game at a time approach.
Philosophy.
Yeah, sure. It's the only game that you could be successful in is the game you're in.
As good as your last
one. Well, yeah. Well, again, but even the last game's going to do nothing for you. It's the only game that matters is the one you're in.
Next one, yeah.
You know, and I remember saying it years ago. You know, here and other. If we're in it, it's a big game. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not. It's a big game because it's somebody else we're playing. Every game is a big game if we're in it.
Absolutely.
You know, because you know that brings. I like it that way because that to me, it has to stir something in you. Yeah. Every game, you can't be up for this game or down for that game. If you're not up for every game, you're probably not going to have a place here.
Yeah, you need to be consistent for every game.
Yeah,
and hungry. Okay. So what are your ambitions for the team, both short term this year and maybe long term a little bit down the road, like this particular?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can speak to the obvious, which is everybody wants trophies. Everybody wants another banner. That's the obvious. But it's that's putting stuff down the road. That's what we call a lag measure. That lags behind everything that has to happen in order to get there. So we understand what the wildly important goal. We understand what that is. But if you don't act on lead measures, then it's all for naught. Then it's just talking shop. Yeah. So it's probably cliche and a beat up phrase, and it's boring. It's not the exciting. It doesn't catch headlines to say we really do want to go one game at a time. I know that doesn't grab headlines, but I don't know too many. And especially with what we're talking about, with the way the league is structured, so many doubleheaders, it's going to be a grind. Yeah. It's absolutely going to be a grind. I'm not going to sit here and, we know what the wildly important goals are. We know what they are. Everybody talks about, right? You've got league championships, you've got cup championships. We know what that is. But I think, and my hope for this group is that we just kind of grow day to day, it's very much. Do we feel like we're better in September compared to what we were in August? Do we feel like we're better in October than we do in September? And that's kind of how we're going to look at it. And it'll come out in the wash.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. What is Coach Pat Price's advice or message to any young people out there with ambitions of playing Superleague, both boys or girls? What advice would you give them?
I suppose it's nothing complicated. As in, you got to play a lot. You can't be an occasional player, and you, if you really do focus on small things, the big things kind of take care of themselves. Okay. And there's, you look at areas where there's a commodity, like, size is a commodity, but you have no control over that. So you shouldn't worry about that. What other skills are commodity? Being a dependable ball handler, right? Being a reliable teammate that could take care of the ball. So go out and do your ball handling, right? And work on your passing. Can you pass with one hand, right? Can you catch with two, right? So they're all controllable, and that's an exciting thing. If I'm a young player, it's exciting to develop, because especially in a place like Neptune where you have role models all over the place, but what's controllable? A ball and a basket. Go become a great shooter. Shooting's a commodity, right? If you're a three-point shooter, you'll find a role. What's controllable? The way you defend. If you could defend, you'll find a role on every team. I don't know anybody who says that guy's a great defender. He just can't make a team. Actually, that's you know what I mean. So it's I suppose the message is control what you can control.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. What you make about defending, because every kid comes into the stadium or whatever gym around the country, and it's all about offense. It's all about offense.
Sure.
But like, somebody could find a role on a Super League team as a superb defender.
Yeah.
But it's just not talked about enough.
Not at all. Yeah. No. And the guy in the ninth row, it doesn't concern him whether a guy was in great defensive position or if he knew how to rotate out of a ball screen, and things like that. But I think, coaches show an appreciation for guys that can make. I mean, look at, it's not simply about outscoring the other team. It's like, can you stop them? And there's value in that. And I suppose the message is there's a role for all kinds of guys. There's roles for glue guys that can keep you together, and help you run through your stuff and be dependable that way.
Like a leadership role.
Well, yeah. I mean, guys like that who are a little bit unspoken. You look at guys like Adam Heafy. He came on in the fourth quarter, one of our preseason games, and things just stabilized because he basically, without an over dependence on obedience. I don't mean it that way. It's that basically what we needed to do, he was there to help us.
Just calm things down.
Yeah, exactly. As in, you knew that if we were trying to run a certain set on offense, he was going to link it together. On defensively, he was going to be dogged, and again, he didn't need to come in and score 15 points to stabilize us. But he was a big part of our comeback in one of those preseason games, and that's the kind of thing is, It's not always the stuff that grabs the headlines, but there's a role for everybody once you're good at it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once you're good at it, there's a role for you.
Yeah. And just in terms of young kids and development of Cork basketball. There was a culture week just gone by, culture weekend, and I just thought the Cork County Board did a fantastic job. They had 2 courts set up in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
And kids just played and played and played 3v3 all weekend. I popped in to have a look at it. It was just amazing.
Yeah, they nailed it, and they deserve full marks on it. You know, there's a lot of people talking about it. There's a great buzz. You know, it's one thing for people to be talking about it during it, but now the last, all day today, I must have had a half a dozen people bring it up that they saw it in town and things like that. So full credit to the board for what they did, and again, I think it's a great timing to it too, right? At preseason and things like that. So, no, wonderful initiative. They should.
And what I liked about it is like somebody could be passing there in town and know absolutely nothing about basketball.
That's right.
And this thing would grab their attention. They go over, have a look, and say, "Oh, that's
right.
Interesting."
Exactly.
They might end up going to a game or
no
whatever,
question. Yeah, no question. It was a terrific event, really.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So Pat, Superleague coach, I presume brings pressures and it's very time consuming. So what does Pat Price do to unwind and get away from basketball? I'm starting my 37th year, so I've kind of been able to navigate how to get through it. I think when there's downtime, I'm probably walking my dog around Kinsale or not a bad place to spend a day. Exactly. Or maybe watching a rugby match or something like that, or spending time with the family and just you sneak in your quiet times, but I think it's important. It's kind of like players, it's like you have to build in your rest time. It's important, but there's I know my routine at this point, Okay. So I think we're closing up at this stage, Pat. I just want to thank you again for taking time out and sit down and have a chat. Best of luck for the season.
Thanks very much.
Goes well.
Great stuff.
I know you don't want to preempt, but hopefully we will be lifting a trophy. We'll see. As you said, we'll see. So thanks very much, Pat.
Thanks very much again.
Appreciate
All
it.
right, super. Thanks.